Well, we got more Smash allegations. About 9 episodes ago, I discussed my thoughts, as late as they were, on Ally and Bochi and whatnot, so I figure this is the best place to continue analyzing the multitude, and I mean multitude, of new stuff that has come out. We're not getting piecemeal anymore, people. This is an all-you-can-eat buffet of disgust, with the occasional sprinkling of BS, although most of the things have been confirmed true. Several people, and I mean prominent-ass people, top players, top commentators, have been outed as one-time ebophiles, blackout drunk bangers, hentai exporters, and harassers, among other things. The community is in disarray, everybody's taking a leave of absence to clear their heads, everybody can't play Smash without thinking about underage dick-sucking one way or the other, hashtag arrest Cinnamon Dunson, both for her crimes and for that name being horrendous. This episode is not going to be light or tiptoed or eggshelled, so fair warning now. I talk about things head-on. This isn't a royal ballroom, I ain't dancing around my subjects, and that's part of why you like the series and my channel to begin with, so let's start measuring our erections with adult supervision for $20 worth of arcade tokens and cancel Evo. I've read every twit longer I could get my hands on. If you don't know what a twit longer is, it's like a tweet, but longer. And it's how people are sharing either their experiences or their confessions. Now, rather than pass judgment on the validity or conclusion of some of these things, although I'll probably do that too for some of the ones I had more to say about, I mostly want to discuss some underlying generalities about some of the kinds of situations we're looking at, and highlight how maybe some stuff isn't as black and white as it seems, because it's easy to just go, thank you for telling your story, I believe you unequivocally, and nothing is your fault, which is true for some of these things, but it takes some actual emotional maturity to look beyond the surface and ask both parties to take some responsibility in some instances. For example, I think the Nairo and Captain Zack case in particular is a double-edged sword where both sides did some wrong shit. You may remember Captain Zack from the Ally shenanigans, so now we're noticing a pattern, and I believe this was a few years ago. This is a 15-year-old dude at the time, Zack, who performed oral sex multiple times on a 20-year-old dude, Nairo, and massaged his nipples, which is a detail I didn't need. I didn't know gay guys even do that to each other. Like oral, I understand, but when you start squeezing the nips, I want out of the story. I'm uncomfortable. I take absolutely no pleasure in anything being done to my nipples, myself or otherwise, so that's just beyond me. But Zack initiated this, and he bragged to his friends after it happened, so the idea that he's a victim is some bullshit to me. Whenever it comes to sexual topics, people always want to infantilize teenagers. Like, oh my god, he's just a little baby boy. Like, no, he's a teenager. Teenagers are not children. They're horny, their hormones work, their genitals work, they are fully functional as sexual beings. The only thing missing is good judgment and experience, which are not trivial things, but let's not pretend this dude has no agency in his own choices. He's old enough to make decisions, and he's old enough to make mistakes. In his case, it's a pattern of behavior, because Nairo will be the second top Smash player that Captain Zack has gotten banned from the scene for instigating some forbidden fruit action. Now, I told you it was double-sided. I'm not saying it's not on Nairo to be the adult in the situation, being that he almost was one at the age of 20. It is definitely also your responsibility as the older person who is being cummed onto. That might not be how you say that, but you know what I mean. It's your responsibility to say no and put a definitive stop to that shit. Stop it right in its tracks, stop it cold. He knew how old Zack was, he still gave in to temptation and allowed this very illegal thing to go down on multiple occasions, and then he bribed Zack into keeping quiet by PayPaling him $2,000, so I guess he's gonna want his money back now because that lip stayed the opposite of zipped. But Nairo posted a statement where he said he wasn't making excuses, that everything he did was wrong, and he failed everyone, and now he's not going to be active on social media. He's assumedly banned from competition, not that there's any competition going on to begin with outside of online stuff, which especially in an online climate, it's like, what are you afraid of? That he's gonna get fellatio from a minor through Wi-Fi? At least the lag might make him last longer. So yes, Nairo failed to resist temptation and bribed the minor into silence, while the minor put on his seduction glasses and initiated an illegal situation for which he somehow has no legal responsibility. Like, that's the other thing. If there was conspiracy to commit a sex crime, it was on Zack's part. Nairo consented, but the conspiracy part is on the initiator, and to me I'm thinking about how sometimes teenagers who commit murder are tried as adults, and I'm wondering how that could be incorporated into sex crimes because I think it's a relevant discussion to be had. I think if a minor initiates a sex crime with full intent and of sound mind, he or she should be tried as an adult. And by tried as an adult, I don't mean they go to jail for a sex crime. I mean the fact that they are then considered an adult, which either nullifies the sex crime completely or at least drastically lowers the repercussions. Because why are sex crimes sex crimes? To protect minors from manipulation and abuse. Well, there was no manipulation or abuse in this case. In fact, you could say the manipulation was on the minor's part, and any emotional turmoil he might feel as a result of his actions is just par for the course when you do something you know is wrong. He knows it's wrong. He did it before, for God's sakes. So I just think there's so much more gray area to this than just, "You're so strong, thank you for speaking out." His twitlonger was titled, "I'm tired of living a life of lies," and people act like they weren't all his lies that he needs to take responsibility for. But there's actually a pretty even split of people who think he's garbage as opposed to just a brave victim, so I'm satisfied with that discourse. Let's move on. Anti is another big figure in Smash, more of a top player in Smash 4 than Ultimate, but still around and still maintains a heavy online presence, and he's definitely a player when it comes to women. Like, he plays the field, he messes around, he has Instagram models on his streams, and he's on Tinder all the time at locals. He gets around from what I've seen and heard. So because of this, you're going to assume there are a fair amount of broken hearts, and when allegations first started coming out about top Smash people, I was like, I would bet 3 farms on Anti being the recipient of at least one of these. And lo and behold, he was the target of a few. I read all 3 of the statements posted in that big collection document someone compiled, and I am decidedly underwhelmed. Suffice to say, of the 3, only one is serious from a legal perspective. One of them is literally just a girl saying he flirts aggressively and that she rejected him. That doesn't belong anywhere near accusations of pedophilia and rape. The idea that you would even come out and say that at this time just speaks to your own ego. And her attitude in the tweet is one of like, LOL, I was happy to reject him. Like, there's a lighthearted bitchiness to it, so you know she wasn't actually hurt or traumatized by this at all. And the idea that this was compiled into the document, what's purpose is to exist for tournament organizers to know who to ban, like it's gathered as part of the evidence that Anti should be banned from tournaments. What, because someone didn't reciprocate his advances? Ridiculous. Another allegation is a bit more substantial, but still super suspect, because the title of the twitlonger is Anti sexually assaulted me on the casino floor during EVO 2017. Sounds bad, right? When you hear that title, what pops into your head? I immediately pictured full penetrative rape, like on the floor. Horrendous shit. So my eyes widened a bit, and I went to read the statement. Guess what happened? He spontaneously kissed her, she didn't react positively, and he left, all while standing up. That's the sexual assault on the casino floor. Now, I know floor in this instance doesn't mean like laying on the floor. It's a casino, so you say you're on the casino floor, but still, I don't like the sensationalism. It was at 5 in the morning after a late night. They had been talking together with his friend for a while. His friend left. She started to go back to her room. He caught up with her. I guess he thought they had something. Turns out they didn't, and he left. Worth mentioning, there's no witnesses and no evidence whatsoever, not that there really could be when they're alone in a hallway, but this is the type of shit that clogs up real, damaging, and important allegations. Somebody kissed you, you didn't like it, you never spoke to him again, and it's been 3 years. Maybe get over it. Believe me, I have nothing but respect for actual victims, but if you want to pretend this is anywhere close to that, you are not an honest person. But now we come to the real allegation, the one that got him dropped from his esports team, T1, before he even had a chance to make a statement. They didn't wait for shit. And they made the announcement on Twitter and disabled the replies like a bunch of cowards, so no respect to T1 at all. Like, even if everything turned out to be true and it was bad, they didn't wait to see. They just cut ties instantly. No sense of loyalty to someone who used to be a valued team member. I think that's cowardice, and I think every other team member of T1 should look at that very carefully. But this allegation is actually true, though not confirmed until after he was already dropped, but I just think it's not a big deal, and I'll tell you why. So a girl he met on Tinder and had sex with lied about her age and turned out to be 15. And that's not me jumping to conclusions. He has proof she lied, and she said she lied so that she can hang out with him and his friends. Plus, you have to say you're 18 just to be allowed on Tinder in the first place. So it's a given that she lied, and Anti's defense is that she lied about her age, which she did. So that's pretty simple, right? Well, I learned that that is not a legally viable defense in some, maybe even most areas. It's not viable in places like New York and Texas, but Pennsylvania, for example, will at least let you build your case if you have substantial evidence that the victim lied, either with a fake ID or text that show it. So it's very inconsistent, like most sex crime laws, which I've talked about forever. But that should be a viable defense everywhere. If a girl lies about her age and tells you she is 18, she has falsified her ability to give legal consent. The consent you now think you have is false. You have no way of knowing that it's false, and in most places it doesn't hold up in court. If it's a crime to sleep with someone who gives you false consent, it should be a crime to falsify consent, because you have just knowingly put someone in a position where they are now going to inadvertently commit a crime that you are a party to, and they're only doing it because of you, and that makes it your fault. It's your fault! A crime took place and it's your fault. The only other fair alternative is for your crimes to cancel each other out, and that's what I think should happen. You falsified consent, you gave him counterfeit consent, essentially, but he thought he had real consent, so his actions were based on not trying to commit a sex crime. Yours is a sex crime because it's the type of crime you only commit when you're trying to have sex, so cancel the sex crimes out, everybody goes home happy, and it was consensual, and she doesn't claim it wasn't. Anti said that the only reason she would bring forth the allegations like this is out of bitterness at the fact that he eventually phased her out of his life, and it's like, yes, why else would there be reason to come forward with this story, in which you admit your own wrongdoing by confirming you lied about your age, while also not claiming it was rape? It's just opportunistic revenge, plain and simple. And technically Anti confessed to sleeping with a 15-year-old, whom he thought was 18, and people are pouncing on that, and it's like, yeah, but given the circumstances, I don't see a single thing wrong with it. The law is fucked up, and it's got tons of holes in it. Not a single person arguing against Anti would disagree with that. They just only care about certain holes at certain times when it can be used to hurt people they don't like. It's real easy. That's the kind of stuff that pisses me off. There's no consistency in the law, and there's no consistency in how people choose to interpret the law. It even got to the point of absurdity, because I started seeing on Twitter this new completely invented, made-up idea that it was supposedly common to literally check the IDs of people you were about to sleep with. That's some of the most naive bullshit I ever heard. Like, one person made that up in the replies, and then everyone piled on like, yeah, always check IDs, bro. That's common knowledge. No, it isn't. It's fucking creepy. I've talked to girls about it, and none of them were cool with the brand new idea of a guy pulling them over outside his bedroom and going, license and registration, please. That doesn't happen, and if it does, it doesn't end in sex. Also, he already had 2 separate confirmations of this girl's age. One was the Tinder account, and one was when he straight up asked. If you're trying to get it a third way, you must really not trust people. And then the ID backers will be like, well, yeah, you can't trust people. You gotta be sure. Oh, so now you're victim blaming? I thought we weren't supposed to do that. Apparently this victim isn't trustworthy. Wow, I didn't know we were dealing with such misogynists and pigs. Obviously, she turned out not to be trustworthy, but miss me with your hypocrisy. This one-sided mentality is so bothersome. Nobody wants to go beyond the believe survivors slogan and actually engage in maybe some mildly difficult thinking where you don't always like the conclusions you come up with, but that's the state of being in a world full of unlikable complexities. If you think arriving at a conclusion you don't like means you haven't finished yet, that is just the most naive philosophy of thought there could be. And similarly, arriving at a conclusion you do like does not necessarily mean you're done thinking either. This shit is complicated. So I go deeper and don't bother with the surface level niceties as much, because those ideas are well tread upon already, but then people think I'm an asshole for skipping over what's already being echoed from every mountaintop on the internet, that we shouldn't automatically dismiss people's stories, that people deserve the opportunity to share them, and that they need support while doing so because it's a hard thing to do. If I don't say that, it's not like you're never gonna hear it. It's just not my domain. It's not where I like to think. It matters, and it's true, and it's not my real estate. People also take it too far and turn it into this militant belief that everyone who comes forward is telling the absolute infallible truth. Don't do that. Listen with an open mind, but don't put your blinders on, don't ignore inconsistencies, don't cover up facts that don't suit your narrative. Here's a story that just about everyone can agree is atrocious. Cinnpie, real name Cinnamon Dunson, as per the hashtag from the beginning of the episode, a 24-year-old female Smash commentator, was recently outed by a young Smash player as taking advantage of him and making out with and even performing oral on him when he was 14 years old. Now, some people will knee-jerk that story and go, wow, good for him! But he had a schoolboy crush on her, as it were, like the kind you might have on a teacher, and she manipulated him and led him on, toyed with him while dating other guys. This is a girl who has a long record of using people to feed a power complex and just doing downright evil stuff as she passed herself around this community, to the point where even the adults she had relations with developed severe mental problems. So imagine that kind of strain on a 14-year-old from someone he classifiably looks up to. And before you let yourself think that what she did physically with him wasn't downright disgusting, know that this 14-year-old looked young even for his age. Like, when it comes to sex normally, Age is the only factor that matters from a legal standpoint, but let's not pretend there aren't other factors that can help justify or condemn an action from a purely humanistic perspective. Like, even when it comes to legal acts, there's a difference between having sex with an 18-year-old who looks 22 versus one that looks 14. People just feel differently about it. It's legally the same, but that's not how people think, and we know this. So we apply this thought process to this situation, which is illegal no matter how you shake it, but maybe you can rationalize to yourself that it's not that bad from a visual standpoint if, say, this dude at least looked old for his age. He doesn't. At age 14, he looks like a toddler. Imagine a 20-something-year-old woman blowing someone who looks like they should be walking around a carnival holding a balloon in their hand and then crying if they ever let it go. This is not a dig at his looks, especially because he's like 16 or 17 now. I'm just painting the picture that this is not only legally, but aesthetically unacceptable. Like, this is a no-fooling situation. If nobody told you the ages of these two individuals and you saw them doing stuff, you would immediately think a crime was occurring, and you'd be right. So the extraneous stuff matters, and even the extraneous stuff isn't on her side, which should fully clear you of any notion that this was okay for her to do in any capacity. And the guy, whose name I am omitting due to recent suicidal thoughts publicly expressed by him that have at least since been rectified, I believe, but still, suffered so much emotional trauma that it left him exploring that sort of option, while Cinnamon Dunson... Dude, is that really her real fucking name? It actually can't be. How are you not a stripper? You fulfilled your horror obligation pretty substantially, but I can't believe you're not also a stripper. Cinnamon Dunson sounds like a character from a fairy tale who bakes children into snickerdoodles. Cinnamon Dunson lit up the Bunsen and watched the children bake. Cinnamon Dunson took out the runts and let them cool on a plate. She bit into their arms and into their legs, head, neck, and shoulders around, till all that was left was an underage cock, and she gobbled it all the way down. It's a very crude fairy tale, one of the Grimm brothers' more obscure works, never really adapted for a modern audience. Certainly I've yet to see a Disney rendition of it. It's also one of the most legit things I've ever written, and I'm not sorry. But Senpai has made no statement of any kind, while pretty much everyone else has, and she's in the most amount of legal trouble, so maybe that's for the better. It's funny, though, because before the allegations came to her, her username on Twitter was Cinnpie Speak Up, in regard to victims speaking up, but then after her allegation came out, she quickly changed it to Cinnpie Do Your Best. If this is your best, I never want to see your worst. Holy shit, none of us will be ready for that. I had an initial paragraph about the stuff against Zero, then I rewrote it entirely when new information came out, and now I've deleted that entirely when even more information came out, and I am replacing it with, I have no idea what the fuck's going on. That is my conclusion. The things that he has admitted to are bad, but some of the other things he's accused of, especially in regard to his girlfriend, who has made a statement calling out people, trying to exploit her just to get at him, like, it's too murky. I thought I was sure one way, then I thought I was sure the other way, and now the only thing I'm sure of is that I'm not sure. And it's okay to be not sure. I think we should make that clear. It is perfectly okay to not have a verified opinion on something that you are 100% sure you don't fully understand, because you don't. None of us do. None of us fully understand any of these cases, even the ones that seem cut and dry. We should accept that. But that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Sunburned Albino, and I'll see you guys next time.